From Leawood to Liberty, you're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
Well, bloodbath is the only way to describe it last night for Republicans. There's no way to really sugarcoat that, whether it's the big national races that are getting a lot of attention from New Jersey, New York City, Virginia, to local races that we had here in the Kansas City area. It was basically the same thing across the board. The Vince Show coming up at 11 o'clock, hosted by Vince Coglianese. He has done an amazing job, obviously, with these local races. He's right there in D.C., so he knows Virginia especially well, was keeping an eye on that. But Vince, we appreciate you joining us on KCMO in Kansas City. What was your big takeaway from last night's election results?
Well, obviously I'm concerned about the direction of our country. No question about it. I mean, the biggest one that stands out to me is what's going on in New York City right now. The fact that they just elected a guy who started his victory speech last night by citing an avowed Marxist philosopher is a sign that we're in for, a tough road here. Now, I will say, insofar as there's any comfort here, Pete, in terms of just thinking about the big picture and the context, it is very typical that the party that currently occupies the White House tends to face losses in the midterm style elections. This is an off-year election. Not the craziest thing. These big headline states that we're talking about, Virginia, New Jersey, California, let's be honest, they're blue states. Mm-hmm. So you're running uphill for Republicans to attempt to get victories here. And if I'm looking at the numbers, one thing I think that Republicans should take away from this is the message should not be to run away at all from Donald Trump. I mean, Donald Trump's electoral coalition is the coalition that's actually doing something on the right, and any sort of attempt to dance away from it, not going to work. I mean, if you look at what happened in Virginia yesterday, Winsome Sears loses to Abigail Spanberger by a much bigger margin than Donald Trump lost Virginia. Donald Trump was very close in Virginia in the last election. New Jersey, Chitterelli loses by a big margin against Mikey Sherrill. President Trump came way closer in New Jersey last year. And I think that's a sign that, one, running on the Trump agenda is important, and two, perhaps it's a message for the White House that come the midterms, President Trump should really be on the campaign trail. Get out into these states, get your base to show up. These are typically low propensity voters, a lot of Trump voters across the country. And if President Trump can rally them, then we can do some big things in the midterms. But yeah, no, there's a lot to process from last night.
Yeah. And listen, you're right, but this has been a conundrum really since Trump won back in 2016. Some of the Trump-only voters, they don't show up for midterms. They don't show up certainly for these off-year elections, it seems like. How do you change that, if at all, Vince, especially now as the GOP becomes more of a party where you have a low-propensity voter, which was not the case a generation ago? It's really the parties have flipped on that front.
Yeah, well, I think more people need to sign up for the Trump agenda in a full-throated, enthusiastic way. I do think so long as Donald Trump is involved in politics, he should be present. I do think that it's good. It would be good to have had President Trump on the campaign trail. I know he's been consumed with legitimately serious things as president, but getting out into Virginia would have been good. He did a kind of a teletown hall at the very end of the campaign. I'll say Winsome Sears, the current lieutenant governor of Virginia, who just lost in her race, she didn't really do herself favors in the 2024 election because she was kind of crapping on Trump in the lead up to the general election. And I think there are Trump voters in Virginia who remembered that, who were kind of soft on their support for her. And I think the proof is in the numbers here. And one other thing in Virginia that people need to realize, the federal government shutdown has played a huge role in this. Democrats right now in the Senate are talking, as we speak, about now finally reopening the government. They waited for Election Day to come and go. And we saw it in the exit polls yesterday. 61% of federal workers in Virginia just voted for the Democrat, Abigail Spanberger. Which is crazy. Even Jake Tapper was on CNN last night going, I can't even believe this. This is like, don't they know that it's Democrats who have kept the government shut? And there's such animosity towards Trump, and there's such an information bubble on the left that you have federal workers, unfortunately, Democrats, who are willing to hurt their own families in their pursuit of taking down Trump. So there's some very interesting and in some cases unfortunate dynamics playing out.
Where is the economic climate factor into all of this for you, Vince? Because it seems like while this was not going to get solved in 8-9 months, high prices, high cost of living, housing is still top of mind for a lot of people right now. And while the Trump agenda is a good one, and hopefully it will work over the long haul, there's still a real pain there, and people have short-term memories. So how much does that factor in when it comes to, the next 12 months and 2026?
Well, I think it's a huge thing. Insofar as maybe somebody was lured into voting for Zoran Mamdani, who didn't sign on to the full-blown communist agenda or whatever. There's people have pointed to the fact that he was running on some economic messages about the high cost of living. Now, New York, the reason the high cost of living exists in New York City is you can thank entirely and exclusively Democrats. I mean, out of control taxes, the property values are impossible. It's really just become a total mess in New York. But across the country, wherever you're seeing high prices right now, this is the hangover of Democrat governance. I mean, the reality, of course, is that Biden has drove our economy just into a ditch, and President Trump is coming back because voters wanted him to fix it. Has he had success? Yeah, big time. He's brought down inflation dramatically. Price increases have slowed. The egg prices have reversed. Grocery prices, as a result, have come down in meaningful senses. And gas prices, by the way, fuel prices are as low in real dollars as they've been in decades. So these are all positive price trends. But Americans, especially Americans who are not, obsessing over every detail of the economic price trends, they don't have to. They're looking at their own pocketbooks and they're going, man, it's tough to make ends meet. I'm going into debt. I've got credit card debt that I'm trying to overcome. When that happens in your life, you sort of judge whoever's in charge, regardless of whether or not they deserve that judgment, because you don't like the status quo, and I get that.
Vince Coglianese, host of The Vince Show, 11 a.m. here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. Do not miss it every weekday following Kevin Keatsman Uncanceled. So, Vince, is there a part of last night that you take some optimism from? I mean, I'm trying to find it. So give me that thing for you where you say, all right, maybe there's this that people can latch onto this morning and find some good news out of.
Well, I do think that the optimism comes from knowing that there is a path out. One, if you're a believer, certainly, in eternity itself and the God above, you really should not become too disheartened because in the end, as you know, we are victorious. But one thing to remember, as I said, is I do think President Trump can be more present on the campaign trail. That's a huge thing. Also, in Virginia, there was a small race, but I think kind of interesting in Loudoun County, Virginia, which has been an absolute disaster for parents and for schools. An independent just won inside of the Loudoun County School Board that was running on defending parents and standing up for little girls and fighting back against all of the poison that the left has been injecting. There are some small victories here, but I think what the biggest victory, insofar as we take any optimism from this, is this should be a call to action for the right. People have to understand none of these victories are going to come easily. Anything you want in life that's worth achieving needs to be worked for. And this should just be a renewed focus for people to double down on the effort to save our country.
Where do you think this goes when it comes to the president's now want to nuke the filibuster in the Senate? Does last night help, hurt that? Does it change the calculation at all?
I don't think that he's really straying from this. I think he sincerely means this. And by the way, I'm supportive of it, to be clear, because the modern filibuster, the one where you don't speak, this is what they do in the Senate now. Nobody speaks to do the filibuster. You and I both know in radio or any other conversational area, if somebody's filibustering, they're usually speaking. That's not what happens in the Senate. It's a silent filibuster these days. That's a recent invention. That started in the 1970s. And my message is let's restore the filibuster to what it used to be, which is if you want to block legislation, you've got to speak. You've got to speak to do it. And the president's right. Regardless of what the Republicans do right now, Democrats have shown an appetite to blow through every door they possibly can for power. They'll eradicate the filibuster in a second to pack that Supreme Court and to do everything else. So Republicans would be wise to think about the strategy right now, because the president, if you want to succeed, you want to convince voters that you're doing something for them, actually achieve the agenda that they elected you for. And that'll take getting past this obstruction in the Senate.
And what is that? I mean, outside of opening up the government, if they do blast through the filibuster, what does that day one agenda look like that really makes a difference for the American people? What would you want to see them do?
Well, right now, they've got the big, beautiful bill. I'm so happy that it got passed, and that's really big for immigration enforcement and tax cuts, all these economic concerns. I would say the biggest thing I want right now is I want all of these U.S. attorneys confirmed. We need accountability. I want more people prosecuted who deserve it. And the only way that works in our justice system at the moment is if you get people who can actually get in there and see these prosecutions through. So, the president clearly needs to get this agenda done. He needs all of his nominees confirmed, and they need to be passing legislation that's completely dedicated to making America great again, because this obstruction is just out of control.
The Vince Show, 11 o'clock this morning here on KCMO Talk Radio. Vince, we'll be listening, my friend. Thanks so much for joining us a day after here on KCMO.
Thanks, Pete.
You bet. That is Vince Coglianese, host of The Vince Show on 95.7 FM.